Hi there. So today we're going to be going over techniques for teaching young children with mild learning and behavioral problems. First, though, we'll go over some key terms from chapter. The first one is IDEA, which is Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and they provide resources as well as special education classes for the children that qualify and meet their criteria for ages kindergarten and older. The next one is pre-referral intervention, and that's preventative measures taken for the child. The sooner they can get the assistance and help they needed, the better outcome they might have. The next one is mental retardation. The DSM-5, which came out this year, no longer uses this term. They now use intellectual disability or similar wording. However, mental retardation was used throughout the text, so it might be in some of the quotes I use today. And then the next one is language learning disability, and that is about students whose learning disability is related primarily to language problems or affecting their language learning skills. Alrighty, let's see. So now we'll go on to the identification process, and this can be a little bit of a tricky situation for some students and parents. For infants and toddlers and preschoolers, it's a little hard to tell if they've got a learning disability at that stage of development because they could potentially grow out of whatever delay they've got if it's mild enough. Usually it's more easily noticed if um, it's a moderate to severe disability. Um, However, if the child is identified as having a disability, it is really important that caregivers, such as the parents, the preschool teachers, and the doctors, are all on the same page as far as what the child needs. Um, and then for elementary school age students, there are a variety of ways to determine which disability as well as the severity of it when they're this age. Yeah. So, for students with learning disabilities, early intervention is really important. The sooner they can get help, the better off they will have further down the road. Um, IDEA's definition of specific learning disabilities is pretty strict. It does not include learning problems that are primarily the result of visual, hearing, or motor disabilities, mental retardation, or emotional disturbance. However, some of the things that does cover are things like dyslexia, developmental aphasia, brain injury, and perceptual disabilities. Um, some risk factors as far as whether a child might have a learning disability would include family history of disabilities, prenatal substance abuse, delay in areas such as speech comprehension and fine or gross motor skills. Um, and then as far as models of identification go, one way to determine whether a student might have a learning disability is discrepancy model. And that is where the teacher will monitor and document the child for a period of time and will be able to pretty much like chart out what the child might be lacking skills in. Um, Another method is the response to intervention, and that's a multi-tiered system, and it stresses really heavily upon early intervention as much as possible, and that requires the teachers, both the regular teacher and the special education teacher, if the child has one, they work together and communicate pretty thoroughly. Alrighty, let's see. So next we'll discuss ADHD and behavioral disorders. Although they are different situations, the criteria they need to meet are pretty similar as far as what IDEA considers. Um, they both need to meet certain qualifications in order to get resources. For ADHD, the DSM breaks it down to three subtypes, which are predominantly hyperactive impulsive, predominantly inattentive, and combined situations. Symptoms must be present for at least 6 months and has to be developed by age 7. Also, they need to meet at least 6 of the 9 items on the criteria list, and that is on page 231 if anyone would like to check that out. And the child will only receive special education if ADHD is affecting his or her learning. And then for behavioral disorder or emotional disturbance, for children that are in kindergarten to third grade, in order to qualify for educational services, they must meet IDEA's definition of emotional disturbance. They must show at least one of the 5 characteristics, and it has to be in such a way that it affects their education. So either a parent or a teacher can request initial evaluation, and the sooner they can get the evaluation and intervention, um, the the sooner the teachers can focus on prevention rather than wait for situations to happen and then have to react to those. So as far as characteristics go for infants, toddlers, and preschoolers in learning communication, infants, toddlers, and preschoolers might learn things a bit slower than their peers, and it might take them a little bit longer to develop the same skills that their peers are developing. So it's important to remember to give them a little bit of extra time if they are falling behind. And then as far as social interactions go, they might need a little bit extra help learning how to interact with their peers. They might not know certain things like how to take turns, how to start playing with a friend, or how to sustain social interactions. And then for children in elementary school with mild learning disabilities and emotional disturbances, learning can be a bit of a problem for them sometimes. They might have trouble with basic reading, writing, math, reasoning, and their memory skills. So give them a little bit extra time if possible. They might have additional services for them as far as educational purposes. And then as far as communication and social characteristics go, language learning disabilities can cause the child's academic and social skills to be a bit frustrating for the child. The child might not know how to utilize certain words or express what they're feeling, and so they tend to probably not interact with their peers as much or talk as much in class. So it's important to be aware of these sort of situations, and if a child seems shy or not willing to talk, they might have a language learning disability. So to track their child's learning and help with individualized instruction, there's a variety of tools to use. One of them is observational data, and you can just take notes. If you observe the child doing certain things, whether negative or positive, just take notes and document it over a period of time. There's also checklist and rating scales. So that could either be done by you or the student, and those could be like, is the child meeting certain goals? Are they participating in class? Are they talking with their friends? Are they being able to read the story in class? And that could be simple as check yes or no, or sometimes. it can, there's definitely a lot of variations as far as the checklist and rating scales go. Also, you can take videos and photos. You can take like a video at the beginning of the year and then take one halfway through the year and see if there's any progress in certain things like social interactions and such. There's also Section 504 accommodation plans, and that is for students whose disabilities are not severe enough to need special education like separate rooms. Sometimes they might just need a little bit extra time on a test, or just a little like different seating arrangements, and that can be discussed with the special education teachers along with the general education teachers to figure out what is best for the student. And then as far as universal design for learning, that recommends that teachers make systematic adjustments in their teaching for all learning differences, whether the child is learning typically or if they have a disability. They suggest that the teacher should be able to adjust their lesson plans and curriculum for all students regardless of the situation, and that it should be unique for each child's needs. And then curriculum-based measurement, that involves frequent assessment of the student's progress, which is then charted on easy-to-read graphs for students to keep or take home to the parents. That is a really easy way to show whether a child is improving in certain academic areas or if they need a little bit extra help. So that's a super easy method to use also, and is really great for students to be able to track their own progress as well as see what they are succeeding in. And then for functional behavior assessment, that is to identify inappropriate behavior, the time which it happens, if there's any triggers, and then classroom conditions that might be affecting the student's behavior. And so by using this method, you can figure out what sets the child off as far as behavioral problems go, and then being able to set up your classroom or prevent any triggers from happening. So it's kind of like a preventative cause. And then for self-monitoring, that's just how it sounds. The child can monitor themselves. They can track what they're doing. So if it's like math, say they're having problems with like addition, every day they can like check, oh, I understand this a little bit more. This is working out for me, or different variations as far as that goes. So for promoting skill development, there's a lot of different methods to do that. We have discussed them in previous chapters as well for other things, but we can also use task analysis, time delay, and instructional adaptation. So for task analysis, sometimes certain tasks or skills might be too overwhelming or too hard for a child. So that's where task analysis can come in and be really beneficial. To help them complete the tasks as a whole, break it up into smaller, doable tasks, and it makes it easier for them to do like step by step. And then the ability isn't so daunting and tough. And so just make sure to keep in account their attention span, their age, and their abilities as far as what they can and cannot do. So then there's time delay, and that is used to promote spontaneous interactions and independent skill development. The teacher can give the child a task and then watch the child and see how they're doing, and if they seem to need help, you can give them help. If they seem to be doing things on their own adequately, then give them prompts only as needed. And then for instructional adaptation, you can take your lesson plan or activity and modify it to the needs of the child, and there's 3 different ways of doing that. The first one is to use the same activities and materials but have different objectives for the child. The second version is use the same activity, materials, and objectives but adapt how the child responds to that. And then the third option is to use the same activity and this different objectives possibly, and then with adapted materials. So there's quite a variety of ways to use that option. To help develop social skills for preschoolers, make sure they understand all the rules and routines. Sometimes that can get a little confusing or tough for them if they're new to preschool, and that might cause them to have a little bit more of those behavioral triggers. And then reward them and reinforce positive peer interactions. For elementary age students, understand how their social emotional skills are affected by their learning disability or their emotional disturbance. Their pro-social skills and self-management might need to be taught. They might not know how to use those skills. And so having small social emotional learning sessions will help the students learn how to utilize those skills. And that can also be really beneficial for students without disabilities. When they're young, it will help them teach how to recognize their feelings and how to express them in an appropriate manner and when to express those. So for developing literacy, the methods for the teaching of reading, writing, and math that were discussed in Chapter 6 can also be utilized for students with mild disabilities. Also, graphic organizations can be a great way to help the students visualize what they're doing. Things such as story maps and word webs, as well as the what I know, what I want to know, and the what I have learned trifold can also be really great for students. It helps them break down what they've learned and what they want to learn next time. And then teaching written language skills, that can be really tough for some students. It's actually tough for all students at first. But it includes the 3 sections, which are written expression, spelling, and handwriting. Although they're all interconnected, you have to learn them each separately, and that can be really hard for students with learning disabilities because they might have trouble with their memory, and so that can make learning these skills exceptionally tough for them. So to summarize what we've covered, identify the child's needs. The sooner we know what's going on, the sooner we can help them. Understand the characteristics of learning disabilities and emotional disturbances will help us better prepare our lessons and activities. Monitoring their progress using a variety of methods will help us track what we are doing and benefiting the child or if it's not, and use specific strategies to help foster and promote their skill development.